this is the reaction of rage, hurt, and anger.
We are being blamed for putting guns in schools, but the purpose of it is to protect our children.
This is one of the most American things anyone could say. And it would be laughable to hear if there wasn't one signature left from legally allowing teachers to carry concealed handguns during the school day. Because the solution to quelling gun violence in schools is to put more guns in schools, right?
It seeks to make the bar so high, but to allow the locals to have the ability to do that it would create a deterrent across our state.
Currently, it's just one of those gun-free zones where people know they can go there and take advantage of folks.
The Tennessee Holler caught up with Rep. Ryan Williams before he entered the floor earlier that day.
Did you get those signatures from the Covenant mom yesterday? I did. Did you have a chance to look at that letter, right?
Which letter?
That she gave you with the signatures?
Oh, yeah, I did. I read it.
Did it maybe give you any pause about what's going on today?
I've seen lots of stuff.
No thoughts about it?
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
And this was his reaction to receiving a petition, reportedly with over 5,000 signatures, advocating against the bill he sponsored, organized by the families, survivors, and staff from the Covenant school shooting last year. It's hard to find words to describe someone who can look these people in the eye and figuratively spit in their faces with his vote.
It bars parents and other teachers from even knowing who is armed, right? So essentially, parents, they have little to no say in deciding whether they want their children in the classroom with an adult who has this firearm, who has this weapon. And that's been a real concern, Kira, for some parents.
As it should be. Not knowing whether or not your child is in a room with an armed adult is not only ridiculously irresponsible and dangerous, but it inherently raises the likelihood of at least one of the students getting shot.
They must be in locked storage at all times because this is nothing but a bad disaster and tragedy waiting to happen if we do not ensure personal responsibility.
Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 23, 75 nays.
Amendment number 4 fails.
I'm absolutely baffled that we will not ensure that we must lock handguns up if we're going to allow them on school property.
It's baffling, yet unsurprising at the same time, that even the most basic and common sense amendments, like requiring the weapons to be securely stored during the day, are too much for the Republican ghouls to handle.
With that, Mr. Speaker, I ask that we pass this amendment and ensure that anybody carrying a handgun on school property is adequately trained.
Members in the gallery, if I hear shouting, you will be removed. That's your first warning. And if I can't tell who it is, then the whole section goes with that one person.
Rep. Clemens and the Dems couldn't even get an amendment passed that requires enhanced training for teachers that is already available under state law.
I hear so often up here that schools are failing. This legislature is failing our schools. They are failing our teachers. They are failing our kids who stood outside here and begged for us to take care of them. And this is even more dangerous than doing nothing. We need to stop the guns before they get to the school. They should never get to the schoolhouse door. You all want to bring the gun battle into the classroom. Why do you want to bring the gun battle into the classroom?
Rep. Gloria Johnson is hitting the heart of the issue. It's all about access to firearms and repairing the broken system we have in place that allows such easy and unfettered access to these weapons.
This is a horrible idea. You were warned.
Vote them out! Vote them out! Vote them out!
Pro-labor Rep. Bo Mitchell having his mic cut by Speaker Cam Sexton is the perfect sequence to capture how powerless the dissenting legislators and the citizens of Tennessee are when it comes to fighting back against the entrenched Republican establishment.
Stop! No! Are we going to give up on the Tennessee that we can be?
No!
Reps Justin Pearson and Justin Jones, two of the three reps who were expelled but later reinstated for protesting gun violence last year, joined protesters once again in a powerful display of solidarity.
This bill is morally insane because a year after a mass shooting took the lives of 3 9-year-olds and 3 adults, this is the response of my Republican colleagues not to pass red flag laws, not to pass universal background checks or a ban on assault weapons, not safe storage laws, but to expand firearms and put more guns in our schools. When the teachers of my district, the teachers of Tennessee, are saying we want to be armed with supplies and books and fair pay, not with firearms. I mean, this bill is insanity, and it just goes to show that we are working with a Republican supermajority here in Tennessee that puts the lives of our children beneath the campaign contributions of the gun industry. That is morally insane. That is shameful. That is unacceptable.
Jones could not be more correct. The Republican Party legislates at the whim of the gun lobby and gun manufacturers, so the cycle of legalized bribery funded by the gun violence epidemic can continue. A massive shout out to the awesome folks at the Tennessee Holler for following this vote and protest and for holding our elected officials as accountable as they can. Be sure to support their work and reporting at the link in the description box below. What you have just seen and heard is security footage obtained by the Idaho Tribune showing a car whiz by the Utah women's basketball team. A person inside said car shouted racial slurs in their direction and more. This stems from the incident that took place back in March during the NCAA tournament. Because of scheduling conflicts with other sports, namely volleyball, in Spokane, Washington, the Utah women's basketball team was moved and was set to stay in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. As they went to Crafted Tap House and Kitchen in the town for dinner, reports surfaced that they were racially abused. It was not just the team who attended, though. The group included staffers, cheerleaders, and the university band. Now, they were doubted over and over and over again by many right-wingers that it didn't happen. However, after the news broke,
we're going to bring this press conference to a close. Evidence room outside of the evidence room. Great people policy Let me just say this. There is another law called the verbal assault law. This press conference is ended. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, lady.
A white supremacist named Dave Riley, who has ties to Republican lawmakers in the region, interrupted a press conference and shouted just that it was all fake. It indeed was not.
You know, we had several instances of some kind of racial hate crimes towards our program, and incredibly upsetting for all of us.
The head coach, Lynn Roberts, went public after it all went down. NBC News confirmed it occurred.
2 lifted pickups were revving their engines and speeding by. The report states the trucks turned around and yelled a racial slur towards the group, some of the members African American.
As did ABC.
Officers confronted the Patriot Front group on Saturday. There they are, on their knees and arrested. Dozens were piled in the back of a moving truck. Police say they were traveling to a pride event where they were hoping to set off a riot.
The region is no stranger to extremist groups. Recall Patriot Front being arrested for attempting to disrupt a pride event in the state. Interesting how the cops will allow these men to keep their masks on. Yet when it comes to protesting genocide and our taxpayer dollars being used to wipe out families in the Middle East, well, those students should have their masks removed and have Fox News broadcast it to their minions. Insanely hypocritical, but hey, since the cops wouldn't do so, we will. Here were their mugshots for all to see. Know if you see one of these individuals, who they are and what they stand for, what their core beliefs are. Because you know what? You should know. We would learn about Coeur d'Alene and the history of northern Idaho throughout all of this via NPR. It became known as a haven for extremism and racist groups in the 70s and 80s when the Aryan Nations relocated its headquarters there. Skinheads held parades in the 90s. Activity declined following a lawsuit, but 2 summers ago, the Pride arrest went down. ESPN would also report. In Spokane and northern Idaho, at least 9 hate groups operated in the region, including Identity Evropa, Proud Boys, Act for America, and America's Promise Ministries, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, and their reporting in the year 2018. To update this story, we have now reached the conclusion, and it is disappointing. Let me tell you about it. The Coeur d'Alene Press writes criminal charges will not be filed against an 18-year-old Post Falls student in connection to a racial incident that received national attention, according to the city's chief deputy city attorney. Ryan S. Hunter would then file a 6-page complaint, and here are parts of it. In short, I cannot find probable cause that Anthony Myers' conduct, shouting out of a moving vehicle at a group of people, constituted either disturbing the peace under state law or disorderly conduct under the CDA municipal code. Instead, what has been clear from the very outset of this incident is that it was not when or where or how Mr. Myers made the grotesque racial statement that caused the justifiable outrage in this case. It was the grotesque racial statement itself. Hunter would then add this. We've already seen the admission that this did happen. So for everyone saying, oh, where's the proof? Oh, we didn't know what happened. They just said it did. And this follows months of reporting that said it did. However, Hunter would add, to be clear, the statements of the other occupants of the vehicle and of Mr. Myers himself all support that he, as a white male, thought it would be funny to shout his willingness to have, you see it there, with a black female, despite his expressed hate for black folks, which he made abundantly clear by deploying the N-word, setting aside the rank absurdity of the claim and the abjectly disgusting thought process required to believe it would be humorous to say something that abhorrent. It nevertheless undermines that he had the required specific intent to intimidate and harass. Now we have more from the spokesman, and I want to read you part of this. Myers' words were deemed to be protected speech under Idaho law. Prosecutors described the language as racist and misogynistic, but determined Myers' actions did not amount to criminal conduct. More evidence would support the use of slurs that were audible when the team was walking back from dinner. Footage captured a silver car driving past the team with someone inside it shouting multiple slurs and threatening sexual acts. That is per the document. A female voice is also heard in the audio shouting for someone to call the police. 5 witnesses gave varied descriptions of the vehicles and a person shouting racial slurs. Lastly, from CNN, and then we shall discuss. In the review, Hunter wrote that an 18-year-old male high school student initially admitted to using the N-word toward the team, but later tried to retract part of his police confession. Here is where I must ask, is threatening to potentially, hypothetically, R-word a woman and using racial slurs protected speech, or are they just protecting him? Discuss it in the comments. If you can, please do support us here at TYT Sports. Become a channel member. Go to youtube.com/TYT Sports and click the join button, and or go to TYT.com/join. In addition, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Appreciate all the love. while one side advocates and cheerleads police brutality.
Joanne Chesimard was put up on the sides of buses when I was a child. There were many, Joanne Chesimard, known now as Assata Shakur. Okay, there are many people in my community, Assata Shakur.
I don't know who that is.
Right, okay, Assata Shakur is currently living in exile in Cuba. She was a former Black Panther. She was accused of murdering police in New Jersey. She was accused of crimes that she, to this day, affirms that she did not commit, and there was no evidence against her for, and she escaped from prison to exile in Cuba. Okay, there have been lots of crimes that have been leveled against people which they didn't do. And I come from a community where that happens routinely.
Guys like Yasin Bey give their lived experiences and how it resonates today.
And yes, by the way, they are trying to take away our history and our heritage. You see that.
Because you see, while the "we must take the country back" bigotry-filled movement possesses the loudest bullhorns,
form community, or have experiences, or share ideas. This is a proposal about how to interact and experience ideas, information, and these are just a group of ideas, of feelings, of sentiments framed in a particular way in a time and space. And the premium is on the now. Hip hop is a continuum of, we're all a continuum, So the different categories are, they apply to a certain degree, but there's something else more essential than that.
there is not a sense, but rather an open admission. Inclusivity, radiating positivity, togetherness are the pillars of this artist, if only many felt the same.
The expected rematch between President Biden and former President Donald Trump is happening. While Biden faces obstacles like concerns about his age and declining approval ratings, Trump is juggling a set of challenges that no presidential candidates have ever confronted.
On the rematch no one asked for, Yasin sums it up perfectly.
Elections don't mean that there's a working democracy.
Exactly, and it's what so many miss.
Ms. Hutchinson, I also want to thank you about bringing up the poverty draft and this idea of a bootstrap. This idea and this metaphor of a bootstrap started off as a joke because it's a physical impossibility to lift yourself up by a bootstrap, by your shoelaces. It's physically impossible. The whole thing is a joke.
Precisely. Yasin knows too.
You can't raise the issue of global poverty without addressing the issue of poverty in America.
Of course.
Because there's no place on earth where poverty is so displaced. I mean,
So the difference is so
there
large.
shouldn't be any poverty in the
Absolutely.
nation with this resource and this type of development. And
When you
why
can
go
be
so
so
far
close.
when
You just walk down the street.
Think globally, act locally. I mean, you don't have to go to Africa to see loads of poor Africans.
Yeah.
You can go to any ghetto, right, in America, and there are poor Africans everywhere.
The fact is, the man formerly known as the Mighty Mos Def has the IQ that I wish our elected leaders possessed. His creativity. To take a blank canvas and turn each harmony into a Picasso was not just a rarity, but is relatively unmatched. For example, his song Mathematics will leave the React community with stank faces like this and this. It is not even arguably, but factually, one of the greatest songs ever written and rapped in the history of the genre.
Mathematics in particular is incredible for its lyricism and musicality.
He pays homage to Alvin Toffler, specifically his book Future Shock, which according to the New York Times was the first in a trilogy of best-selling books forecasting how people and institutions would contend with the immense strains and soaring opportunities of accelerating change. From Keith Schneider. His predictions about the consequences to culture, the family, government, and the economy were remarkably accurate. He foresaw the development of cloning, the popularity and influence of personal computers, and the invention of the internet, cable TV, and telecommuting. Essentially, Yasin is echoing Toffler, calling his shot many, many years ago, that mankind is going to suffer from the technological advancements society will give. And he has largely been right. He gives a nod to the 1974 film The Towering Inferno, with how poorly the building was constructed, and using it as a metaphor to what what many minorities face in America, that they are in places that are primarily disadvantaged, thus living in hell, equating fire from the inferno to the everyday living situations of countless Americans. There are direct references to the prison industrial complex, which is a lucrative system in and of itself, generating $39 billion, all paid for by the American taxpayer, with which many corporations benefit from. Shout out to the 13th Amendment, Reagan and Nixon. Another timeless line is one you see on your screens. It's the perceived balance that many must face, with a mention, if no one caught it, to Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, where he utters the phrase, "Let freedom ring." It's a conundrum, because if you're working class, you must rise and wake up when your alarm goes off. Yet simultaneously, if you have a motive for a better life, which we all do, we all want more, it is silenced repeatedly by the day-to-day struggles. Whether it is working for the man or being a cog in the system, it is all intertwined. Displacement, disenfranchisement, inequality, inequity, modern-day slavery, and much more is encapsulated with just these two lines, including Cambodia in the 1970s. The profit motive, fueled by the capitalistic endeavors of billion-dollar corporations and CEOs, lead to the workers being taken advantage of and even killed for the almighty dollar. It is why every day I will scream it from the rooftops, even though many at this company will disagree. Capitalism is not what we think it is, that there are these great benefits. Yeah, it'll benefit the top 1%. It'll benefit Wall Street. It will benefit those who run multi-million or billion-dollar companies, but it is not the way. You cannot have a moral argument with capitalism because it has led to so many downfalls within our society. Even as a sign artist, he takes aim at record labels, taking their unearned share of the pie, leaving Yassine and many others with little in the end. Look no further than the case studies of TLC and De La Soul, to name a few. A line that we've discussed over and over and over again. The military budget in this country is absurd, yet all we hear is constant fear-mongering to justify the unjustifiable, spending so much money on defense contractors that rake in record profits, while we starve and can't afford diapers per se, and can't even get health care. Yassine makes references to Gary Webb, the crack epidemic in the 1980s, the failures of the criminal justice system, specifically how a defendant could go in front of a judge for a short time, Yassine uses 5 minutes, and be sentenced 2 years in prison. The power of cell phones, and inexplicably, the wiretapping from our own government is also mentioned, with a nod to Michael Jackson's song, "You Are Not Alone," in that essentially, you think a phone call is just between you and the other end? One of the best lines of the song meshes together, as you see on your screens, the AIDS epidemic, revisiting the crack epidemic, and how the education system is so flawed. The younger generation cannot spell, but they can give you this butt-kicking in video games. There's a plethora of knowledge in the second stanza, from California's 1994 three-strike rule, where these laws had a trickle-down effect no matter the crime. In addition, he mentions the 7 deadly thrills, the depressingly low amount minimum wages in the United States of America. When he wrote this song, he puts $5.15 in his rhymes. The last time it went up was in 2009. And through it all, we remain at $7.25. And another wordplay on how countless American citizens are forced into a world of crime because of the systems put in place to keep many down and prevent it from prospering. In the end, what happens? The prison industrial complex benefits. Another favorite, the lack of affordability, public housing, overall well-being, because politicians give endless checks to those that suppress us, all courtesy of the state. I end with this, and I have said this before. My top tier, because I don't think you can do Mount Rushmores, I don't think you can do top 5s, I think you go in tiers. And it's Black Thought and Yassine Bey. And the reason being is because of the attention to detail, the references that they make. It is almost an encyclopedia of knowledge of the history of the past, potentially and sometimes repeating itself in the current days. How policy from back then, injustices from back then, still plague us today. But it is the creativity that separates the haves from the have-nots, the top tiers to the bottom tiers. There is a wide amount between those that personally I value ever so greatly and those that'll get play on the radio because you can bop to it.